I'm Marty Stouffer. North America has an amazing diversity of habitats, from dry deserts to lush prairies to cool forests. One of the most mysterious creatures in our northern forest is the marten. A golden brown body and orange throat cause the marten to look something like a miniature red fox. Its appearance brings other animals to mind also. It has the ears of a house cat, the bushy tail of a squirrel, and the lanky body of a weasel. The behavior of this animal is as unique as its appearance. So come along as we meet the marten. Once the northern half of the United States and most of Canada was covered with conifers, a global belt of deep woods called the boreal forest. What remains of most of these fragmented wilderness lands lies in Canada or in remote, rugged areas of the western U.S., shielded from civilization by mountain ranges. Yet even in the Midwest, there are a few places wild enough to harbor the most elusive of forest creatures. In a hollow, deep in the woods of Minnesota, north of Lake Superior, a female marten has given birth to her litter of 2 kittens. At birth, marten kittens weigh less than an ounce. Their eyes and ears are tightly closed. Pale yellow fuzz covers their bodies. Within weeks, a soft brown coat trimmed with a creamy white bib replaces the fuzz. By late spring, the forest is bursting with new life, including the 2 now curious marten kittens. At 7 weeks, they're ready to explore outside their den for the very first time. The American, or pine marten, once inhabited the nearly unbroken forest, which stretched from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Now, because of clear-cutting of all but a few stands of old-growth conifers, martens live largely in wilderness islands. A juvenile red squirrel watches, safe for now. It has little to fear from the awkward young martens. Within months, the clumsy kittens will become acrobatic adults, hunters of mice and voles, foragers of fruits and berries, and occasionally, predators of red squirrels. The kitten's pursuit is nothing more than constructive play, practice for later on when they'll fend for themselves. Within 2 months, the fledgling martens will be on their own. In this one brief, carefree summer, they must hone hunting skills needed in adulthood. Only their mother serves as teacher. The male marten plays no part in rearing his offspring. Although nesting birds and their eggs are sometimes part of the diverse marten menu, the crow has little to fear from this inexperienced juvenile. Martens are the most arboreal members of the weasel family, but do most of their hunting on the ground, using the jumble of down timber as travel routes, resting sites, and communication points. Even in adolescence, they mark their territory, rubbing musk from a belly gland onto the deadfall. In a few short weeks, the female marten will go into estrus, and the urge to find a mate and breed will overpower her maternal instincts. Until then, she'll urge her offspring to learn the lessons of survival. By midsummer, the young are on their own. Solitary except for the brief breeding season, even the siblings have separated. From a vantage point high in the forest canopy, one of the juveniles spots a prospective meal on the cluttered forest floor. Decaying debris beneath the mature conifers supports a tremendous variety of wildlife. Today, it provides an escape route for an eastern chipmunk. The young marten loses its quarry out the back door and can't make up enough ground to overtake the speedy chipmunk. The marten must be as careful as it is quick. In this instance, the predatory marten could become prey for the fox. But a marten is too agile a climber for the earthbound red fox. Other natural enemies include the cougar, lynx, wolf, coyote, great horned owl, and eagle. In summer, the opportunistic marten finds a forest full of food selections, like ripening blackberries. A far easier catch than a clever chipmunk. Blueberries are another favorite food. Observers in Alaska reported seeing martens with lips stained blue from eating so many blueberries. High bush cranberries and juicy wild raspberries are other irresistible treats. Rows of holes drilled by an industrious yellow-bellied sapsucker on this alder tree ooze sweet sap. Insects and birds are drawn for a drink. Warbler, wasp, and woodpecker all feed on the gooey nectar. keen nose of the marten picks up the scent. Martens are so irresistibly drawn to sweets that they can be easily caught in delectably baited traps. One biologist in Glacier National Park live trapped the same male marten 77 times. Although the marten detests getting wet because its coat is not waterproof, it can often be found hunting near waterways where prey is plentiful. A white-footed mouse is driven out of hiding. The marten hasn't yet mastered the technique, and it allows the tiny rodent to run up a small tree and onto a branch sturdy enough to hold a mouse, but not a marten. The marten couldn't know that this is a favorite and an effective trick of the white-footed mouse. The game is over. Mouse 1, marten 0. Undaunted, the persistent young marten continues to hunt. It's late summer. The graceful marten has laid claim to its own wilderness territory. Bursting with energy, it seems to jump for joy. I can hardly imagine an animal which looks any more alert than the marten. This beautiful, bright-eyed ball of fur probably weighs between 2 and 3 pounds. It stands only 7 inches tall and measures a little over 2 feet from the end of its bushy tail to the tip of its inquisitive black nose. Nearby, a red-tailed hawk quietly watches. The hawk doesn't go unnoticed. Taking no chances, the youngster dives for cover. Few animals are as brashly curious as the marten. If this were a larger bird of prey, like a golden eagle, the reckless youngster might be in for trouble. Natural predators seem to have little impact on marten numbers. Man, with his steel traps and chainsaws, is its only serious threat. Even so, the hawk successfully bluffs the youngster back into hiding. Experts once believed that the marten dined almost exclusively on a diet of squirrel meat. This has since been disproved, but a swift red squirrel versus a lightning-fast marten is still one of nature's classic matchups. Both marten and squirrel can rotate their legs 180 degrees, a double-jointed maneuver that enables them to climb head-first down trees. Specialized muscles and flexible backbones account for their amazing agility. Autumn is just around the corner here in the North Woods. Honeybees are preparing for the frigid season ahead, building up their supplies of sweet nectar. Black bears are also constantly in search of food, storing up fat reserves that will see them through the long northern winter. And of course, the marten is always on the lookout for a sweet treat at any time of the year. The nearsighted bear has an incredibly well-developed sense of smell, which guides it to the honey. Once the coast is clear, the marten tries its luck. Even though it pays the price of a few stings to the nose, the sweet reward seems worth the effort. By October, the forest landscape has changed. The red-backed vole, the single most important source of food for the marten, has halted its prodigious reproductive cycle. During the summer, the plump rodent gives birth to an average of 6 litters of 5 to 9 young. Another prolific prey species, the cottontail, occupies the edges of marten territory, feeding at the borders of dense woods. By now, the maturing marten has learned its lessons well. A simple bite to the skull kills mice and voles, but a bite to the throat is necessary to overcome larger prey. This sort of old-growth forest appears to be the only type of habitat which contains all the ingredients necessary for marten survival. Winter in the northern forest is long and cold. Gone are the leisurely berry-picking days of summer. Survival now depends on making the most of every hunting opportunity. From its perch high in a fir tree, the marten has a bird's-eye view of prey on the forest floor. On fluffy snow, the marten has little chance of catching the perfectly adapted snowshoe hare. On hardpack, the marten might have succeeded. The marten's ability to survive extreme winters has been a mystery until recently. They lack the heavy insulating coat of most other northern fur bearers, like the fox and wolverine, and they don't rely on fat supplies for survival. In fact, their body fat levels rarely exceed 4%, about the same as a lean marathon runner. So survival depends on their ability to keep their body temperature high by regularly capturing prey. This habitat also contains a prey base just large enough to support a vigilant hunter like the marten. Even when hungry, the marten toys with the white-footed mouse, cat-like in its carefree approach to feeding. Scientists call the marten an indicator species, a barometer of a healthy forest ecosystem, sensitive to any significant change in its habitat. The marten is truly one of the most enduring symbols of the wilderness. The marten is beneficial in keeping rodent populations under control, and it further helps man gauge his effect on many other animals which live in old-growth forests. The marten needs this multi-layered habitat. To ensure its future, we must preserve these woodlands, for only within them are we going to be able to meet the marten. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stouffer. Here's a quiz for you. Which animal is ferocious as a weasel, graceful as an otter, and when upset, smelly as any skunk? Give up? The answer, the American mink, more commonly thought of as a world-class symbol of luxury. Its glistening pelt in the form of mink coats has made it famous. Yet most people know very little about its habits in the wild. To see this semi-aquatic hunter, we traveled to Minnesota, where the profusion of lakes and streams affords it an ideal habitat. Discover with me how much more there is than just a fur coat to the Minnesota mink. Minnesota has a rich diversity of human culture, wildlife, and landscapes. Adding to the diversity are its dramatic seasonal changes. With the arrival of winter, many animals that live here during the summer migrate south to more gentle climates. Among those that stay are members of the weasel family, animals whose thick fur keeps them warm through the winter. The pine marten, fisher, ermine, otter, and mink, like this adult male. Mink share this frozen wilderness with the adaptable coyote. Using its keen sense of smell, finding food is a full-time job for the coyote. Mink are not normally included in the coyote's diet, but with the hungry predator nearby, a mink is wary enough to try to take cover. With piercing teeth and claws, the mink is easily capable of fending off a predator 4 times its size. In Minnesota, the mating season for mink begins in late February. For 3 weeks, they abandon their solitary ways to seek prospective mates. This rutting male may have traveled 15 miles in search of a receptive female. Members of each sex mate with 2 or more different partners. It's interesting that this promiscuous behavior promotes survival of the fittest. Because she mated with several males, the female's offspring will have different fathers. Studies show that the last mating produces most of the kits within a litter. Males still mating at the end of the season have most likely traveled the farthest and fought off the most rivals. So the strongest, most aggressive males will produce more offspring. Hardly a romantic interlude, mink courtship consists of furious fighting. If the female is at the peak of her heat, she will copulate, but not without a struggle. Following conception, the fertilized eggs lie dormant inside the female. After about 6 weeks, they become implanted in the uterine wall and begin to develop. This delayed implantation is a great advantage in the north, since it usually delays birth until the arrival of spring, a time when more prey will be available. The blanket of white melts into a cascade of blue. The runoff pours into Lake Superior, the largest body of fresh water in the world. It's no wonder native Indians named this land Minnesota, which means land of water, blue as the sky. In these northern wetlands, mosquitoes and moose both thrive, and so do mink. Yet mink are also surprisingly abundant throughout the rest of North America, from the windswept Arctic tundra to the steamy swamps of Florida. Only in the desert Southwest, where there are few waterways for the mink to prowl, are they absent. The mink occupies an ecological niche between that of its cousins, the river otter and the weasel. The otter is one of the larger members of the weasel family. It spends most of its time in the water, hunting for fish and other aquatic creatures. With webbed feet and a thick layer of fat, the otter is more at home underwater than above. Mice and other small mammals are hunted by the land-loving weasel. Lightning swift, with a long, nimble body, the weasel is expert at catching prey on solid ground. But the semi-aquatic mink, midway in size between the otter and the weasel, takes advantage of both sides of the shore. Its home range may stretch a mile or two along a waterway, yet it seldom travels more than a few yards from the shoreline. A mink marks its home range with a strong scent which smells a lot like a skunk. It does this primarily to keep other mink away from its hunting grounds, but the foul musk is also used to discourage predators. Mink are normally seen combing the shallows for frogs, salamanders, and crayfish, but on occasion they do venture into the water after fish, ducks, and muskrats, or they go inland to hunt mice and rabbits. Although they're primarily meat eaters, mink feed on everything from birds to berries. Perhaps their unspecialized diet is one reason why mink, unlike most fur bearers, are so easily raised on ranches. Since the Civil War, mink have been bred in captivity. Today, for every mink trapped in the wild, 5 are supplied by fur farms. Because of this, furriers are able to meet the demand for mink coats, while mink remain abundant throughout most of their native range. During the lengthening days of spring, a female searches ravenously for food before she gives birth. A lighter-colored male has also come to this riverbank to try his luck fishing. Like otters, mink are fond of fish. Unlike otters, their vision is not well adapted for hunting underwater. But fish are often found in the shallows where a mink hunts. The intruder, unsuccessful at his own fishing, tries to take the catch away from the female. Even with mink, there's no such thing as a free lunch. The female returns to her hard-earned meal, while the male heads downstream. The young are born in April or May, usually in a hollow log, an abandoned muskrat lodge, or a den dug into a stream bank. Mink can have up to 8 kits, but as with this female, they average about 4 per litter. The babies are born with a padding of thick skin on the back of their necks. It provides protection from the mother's sharp teeth when she picks them up. The newborn kits are hairless and their eyes are sealed shut. At this stage, they bear little resemblance to their alert, fur-covered parents. The nursing female leaves to hunt along the river. The abundance of fresh water in Minnesota is vital to animals which require a wetland habitat, and it's equally important to the people who live here. Minnesota's 15,000 lakes offer unsurpassed canoeing. And of course, fly fishing for rainbow trout is another favorite activity. Like many wild animals, mink have learned that where there are people, there's usually food. Unaware that a wily mink is nearby, the fisherman leaves his creel unguarded. If the female has her heart set on fresh fish, she'll have to catch her own. However, mink are opportunistic, and these young Canada geese do not go unnoticed. One of these goslings would make a great meal for the nursing mother mink. But since the young geese stay close by their protective parents, the mink leaves to satisfy her hunger elsewhere. As summer arrives, the Minnesota woodlands become filled with small creatures for the mink to hunt. The den entrance is now partly obscured by a lush undergrowth of grass, trilliums, and willows. The 3-week-old babies have grown rapidly on their diet of rich milk and will soon begin feeding on the kills their mother brings back to the den. They're now covered with a thick, wavy underfur, but they still lack the long, silky guard hairs of their parents' coat. The guard hairs of a mink, when struck by sunlight, are almost prismatic, reflecting tints of red, green, and blue. In September, both the mother and her grown young will shed their light brown summer coats and replace them with thick, dark winter coats. Since mink are solitary animals, this family will separate by autumn. But for now, the bond between a mother mink and her young is as powerful as any on Earth. Summer is a time for exploration and play. With wide open eyes and wobbly legs, the month-old kits have started to venture outside the den. The mother mink must now spend even more time hunting to satisfy her youngsters' newly acquired taste for meat. The warm sunshine is probably a welcome sensation after the dampness of the den. Unfortunately, the outside world offers much less protection from danger. This nearby black bear also seems to enjoy basking in the dappled sunlight. The mother returns to check on her litter. Her movement rouses the bear's curiosity. Unaware of the approaching bear, the kits continue to explore outside the den. Learning to flee from predators is the first and most important lesson for all wild babies. The mother mink teaches her young the hard way by literally dragging them into the den. Luckily for the mink family, the bear is more curious than hungry. Mink often hoard scraps from past kills, bones, feathers, fur, and pieces of hide, for bedding material or for future meals. The bear, as well as the flies, were probably attracted to the den by the smell. Black bears also like to travel along riverbanks and often cross paths with mink. But the mink's quickness and feisty disposition usually keep it out of trouble. The mink are safe and snug in their sheltered hideaway, but soon the youngsters will spend more time away from the den, hunting with their mother. "10 miles upstream from Lake Superior, this tributary provides an ideal nursery for insect larvae and fish eggs, which are fed upon by frogs. In turn, these amphibians are consumed by the mink. At At 2 months of age, the youngsters already display a weasel-like preoccupation with hunting. The curious youngsters stay close by their mother and continue to learn from her the finer points of catching prey. Yet it looks like their teacher could use a few lessons herself. As her offspring poke among the rocks, the female interrupts their foraging for a swimming lesson. At first, the juvenile mink seem bewildered by their mother's strange behavior. But spurred by a natural instinct to swim, they take the plunge. With partially webbed feet, the young mink find it easy to paddle against the gentle current of the stream. A close relative, the now extinct sea mink, was completely adapted for an aquatic way of life. These saltwater mink once frolicked in the coastal waves off New England, but mysteriously disappeared around the turn of the century. In several weeks, these youngsters will leave the family group and, with the skills learned from their mother, seek a life on their own. Though the survival of mink is hampered by water pollution and the loss of wetland habitat, their future seems secure. It's been called a weasel in a fur coat for raiding hen houses. Yet the mink is actually helpful in controlling the number of rodents and insects. And of course, trappers and fur ranchers consider it a valuable asset. As for its place in nature, the mink fills a specific niche between land and water, making the best of both worlds. Because of this versatility, the future looks bright for the Minnesota mink. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America.
I'm Marty Stouffer. You know, if I were a wild animal, I'd be a river otter. Now, some of you would probably be a grizzly bear, big and powerful, or a bald eagle, beautiful and free. But as far as I'm concerned, a river otter is the one animal that really knows how to live. This fun-loving member of the weasel family finds a good time wherever it goes. It plays every chance it gets. It makes a game out of practically everything it does. It's a streamlined swimmer with a passion for downhill sliding, and it will climb up and slide down a riverbank for hours on end. But the otter has a serious side, too. It's a skilled hunter and a faithful parent. Both mother and father share in raising the young. So let's take a look at my favorite animal. We follow a family as their young grow up in these wild mountains of upstate New York for this animal portrait. Otters of the Adirondacks.
When we think of New York, most of us think of the city instead of the state. It's hard to imagine that it's only a few hours' drive from Wall Street to Wilderness. North and west of the state capital at Albany lie quiet towns and rustic villages, and the largest park of any kind in the continental United States. 3 times larger than Yellowstone National Park, Adirondack State Park encompasses more than 6 million acres of lakes and streams, mountains and forests. This lush, diversified habitat is located within a day's drive of 55 million people. Yet it supports a great proportion of the wildlife to be found in our northeastern states. Within the park are 2,300 ponds and lakes and over 30,000 miles of brooks and rivers. The river otter is native to all of North America, but nowhere could this water-loving creature ask for a better home. In spring, the female otter finds a den along the riverbank, where she raises a litter of from 1 to 4 young. Baby otters mature very slowly. It takes 5 to 7 weeks before their eyes are even open. The mother otter is especially devoted to her offspring during these first 2 months of life. So devoted, in fact, that she will not allow the male otter anywhere near the den. But in order to provide rich milk for her babies, she must leave often to hunt for food. Unlike most mammals, the otter has webbed feet. Its tapered tail acts as a rudder for smooth, efficient motion. This creature may not look very appealing, but the freshwater crayfish is one of the otter's favorite foods. When diving, the otter's ears and nose are shut tight. Its strong lungs and slow pulse rate enable it to stay submerged for several minutes, at depths of 30 feet or more. Stiff whiskers act as feelers to compensate for weak eyesight underwater. The otter takes its meals on or near shore and catches many of them there too. An opportunistic carnivore, its diet includes fish, frogs, freshwater clams and mussels, insects, and even an occasional mouse, rabbit, or duck. During the 4 months that she nurses her pups, the female's appetite is insatiable. A month has passed. It's now early summer. The young otters are finally ready to begin exploring the world outside their den. At 3 months of age, they have finally shed their baby fur for the thick, waterproof coats they'll need in order to begin swimming lessons. Yet they are not instinctively water babies. The mother otter coaxes and encourages them through every step. Drinking the water seems to be one way of getting used to it, or maybe of avoiding it. But for an otter, curiosity is an inborn trait. Now that the young otters are no longer confined to the den, the male otter senses that it's time for him to join his family. The female is watchful as the male greets his offspring and takes over as teacher. Though the young ones have never seen him before, they treat him like a long-lost friend. Even the female barks her greeting. Encouraged by the example of this new adult and coaxed from in front as well as from behind, the youngsters finally take to the water. At first, it's more dog paddle than ballet. This painted turtle is no slouch when it comes to swimming. At least he's slow and steady. But little does he know that he's about to be used as an underwater frisbee. The only thing more insatiable than an otter's appetite for food is its appetite for play. It literally would rather play than eat, and a live toy is the most fun of all. Not knowing that no harm is meant, the turtle clams up. The river's current has its own sense of play. It will be a while before these youngsters seek out the rapids and waterfalls where their parents sometimes frolic. The young otters, overwhelmed by curiosity, forget for a few moments that they have never learned to dive or hold their breath. When they do remember, it's too late for panic. They already know how. There's nothing to do but go back for a bit of practice. Among the otter's neighbors is this beaver, a hard-working creature who seems unable to comprehend that the family that plays together stays together. As the otter family dries off by rolling in the grass, and the father returns to the water to hunt, the beaver methodically goes about his business. Otters have often been known to tweak the tails of beavers while they're hard at work. Perhaps living well is the best revenge, but the question is, who's living well? Summertime in the protected Adirondacks Forest Preserve is a benevolent time for all, and everyone lives well. Each creature has its own way of life, and each way is special. Play has been defined as activity without purpose. Perhaps this is why the otter is one of the few truly playful animals. Otters live in family groups, not packs or herds, and problems are mainly solved by play, not by confrontation. So all this tumbling and wrestling serves only to prepare the pups for more play. For the young otters in their constant exploration, all the world's a playground, and every creature in it a potential toy. Some you get to play with, some you don't. A sense of adventure keeps the otter family on the move. They often roam 15 miles in a single day. They may follow a river upstream to its tributaries or downstream to a lake, feeding as they go. Like this mink, otters are members of the weasel family and sometimes compete with the mink for food. Territory is not a problem, since the otters seem content wherever they end up. The mink is somewhat of an aquanaut too, but far more businesslike than its larger cousin. The otter's playfulness seems confusing to the mink. But the mink has already taken what it wanted and has little time to indulge in mere fun. Mutual grooming in the warm sunshine distributes skin oils through their double layer of thick fur. This evolutionary adaptation keeps the otters waterproof and probably also feels good. And feeling good is what the otter's whole life is about. If it isn't fun, an otter won't do it. Every aspect of daily activity is turned into a game. An otter will play with a stick, a shell, or a pebble for hours on end. But its all-time favorite activity is sliding. The red-tailed hawk seems to be attracted by a form of commotion it cannot comprehend. As one writer wrote about otters, the greater the extent of confusion they can create about them, the more contented they feel. This confusion may serve a purpose. It may disorient predators like the hawk. Otters have few natural enemies. Predators like foxes or birds of prey cannot follow them underwater, and water predators like snapping turtles can seldom catch an otter unaware. An otter in the wild will often live 15 years. In the Adirondacks, as elsewhere, one of the staple items in its diet is fish. For the most part, the fish taken are the more easily captured slow swimmers and bottom feeders. but otters are known to catch trout and other fast-moving game fish by trapping them in the shallows. Even if the fish should manage to escape to deeper water, it will have a hard time outswimming an otter that can move at speeds of up to 7 miles an hour. The greatest threat to both fish and otters in the Adirondacks and in many other parts of the country is almost invisible. It's acid rain. Hundreds of tons of sulfur dioxide and other chemicals pour from the smokestacks of eastern industries each year. These pollutants are carried by prevailing winds and fall over the Adirondacks watershed as acidic rain or snow. The result is that many once teeming lakes are now lifeless and sterile, totally devoid of aquatic life. No fish, reptiles, or amphibians, nothing on which an otter might feed. Game fish like trout and perch have the least resistance to acidified water and are the first to die. Bottom feeders like suckers and bullheads have greater tolerance, but fish are not the only creatures affected. In some lakes, nothing but the most acid-tolerant algae survives, and in many areas, the entire food chain has been destroyed. Around 1900, otters disappeared from the Adirondacks due to unregulated hunting and trapping. Now, unregulated industrial and automotive pollution poses an even greater threat, and not only to the otter. The long-term economic cost of this problem will be much greater than the short-term price of forcing industry to clean up its act. Yet, little has been done. The otter, with its free-ranging mobility and adaptable eating habits, has a better chance of surviving than most. But unless we humans tackle the problem we've created, chances are the otter will have to work harder and harder to find something to eat, and have less and less time to inspire us with its freewheeling appetite for fun. Many creatures are rarer than river otters, but few are more endearing, and none will bring you greater pleasure.
If you're lucky enough to come upon an otter, be prepared to spend a few hours. I bet you'll have as good a time as it does. Although otters are now being appreciated for their fun-loving outlook on life, they were once seen only as fur bearers to be trapped and sold. Man's over-trapping of the past and his pollution of the present have made life nearly impossible for these animals. Luckily, in addition to being playful, they're also adaptable. And that's the reason we can still delight in the otters of the Adirondacks. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stouffer. The domestic dog has won a place in our hearts, granted no other animal. Millions are kept as pets, and we spend millions of dollars on them. Dogs, at least the domestic variety, are everywhere. Surprisingly, man's best friend is closely related to the wild dogs, foxes, coyotes, and wolves. And in fact, the wolf species is the great-grandfather of all domestic dogs. But for many years, wild dogs have been feared and misunderstood. Today, at last, we are learning about their role in a balanced ecosystem. And we are becoming fascinated by the social behavior of the wild dogs. The study of wild dogs, or canids, has taken me to some of the most remote areas of the country. In these balanced natural ecosystems, the wild dogs still live and hunt as they have for ages, since long before the presence of man. The coyote prefers small animals like this muskrat. But catching a meal is not always easy. And so the coyote moves on. It's most likely to take what is easiest to catch, like domestic sheep. They're much slower and less alert than wild prey. Man tries at every opportunity to stop the coyote in its tracks. But we've laid out an incredible feast of livestock on our public lands, and then we complain when predators like the coyote join in. Yet in a very real sense, we are the intruders here. Given a choice, the controversial coyote will live primarily on rodents and other small animals.
When not hunting for voles, as it is here, this wild dog will look for creatures like ground-nesting birds, reptiles and amphibians, and other small mammals, such as this ground squirrel or these deer mice. Been calculated that a coyote left to feed on mice alone could consume 10,000 of them in 1 year. In practical terms, these 10,000 rodents can do far more damage than a single coyote killing an occasional sheep. Since World War II, rodents have destroyed more grain in fields in this country than we have sent abroad to hungry peoples. And that's just a conservative estimate. A close cousin of the coyote is the red wolf. It once roamed the southern areas of the country, but is now extinct in the wild. Before man knew anything about the benefits of this canid, he killed it off, mainly because of occasional raids on his livestock. In its last days, the red wolf led a rather solitary life, hunting small game like these quail and eating plants and berries. This wolf, the smallest in the world, hunts no more. These films were taken in the recent past, when there were still a few red wolves left in Texas and Louisiana. Like all wild dogs, the red wolf has a close-knit family life. I think it's ironic that this creature we call bloodthirsty and brutal is so loving and affectionate. Training of the intelligent, curious pups begins early in their lives, when their mother introduces them to prey by bringing it back to the den. But sometimes a mother must curb her youngster's endless curiosity. And although I may be giving this wolf human traits, it certainly seems as if she is teaching her wayward pup a lesson by carrying it back home in such an uncomfortable way. It's no accident that these timber wolves, also called gray wolves, resemble German shepherds. Wolves are the ancestors of all domestic dogs. There is evidence that about 15,000 years ago, wolves began to associate with man, following hunting tribes and eating what they left behind. Gradually, over centuries, the wild dogs became domesticated by man. For our own pets and hunting dogs, we selected out the most admirable and useful traits from these wild dogs: their loyalty, communication, affection, and hunting skills. Largest of all the wild dogs, the timber wolf has the largest prey. But a single wolf cannot kill a single deer. If one and all are to eat, the wolves must work in a cooperative pack. It is from this method of group hunting that the wolves' highly structured social order evolved. Each individual has a place in the pack's hierarchy. By using this group hunting technique, wolves in different areas of North America can take down such large prey as caribou, elk, and even moose, animals that may be 10 times the weight of a single wolf. Just as in any group, there are leaders and followers. In the wolf pack, an individual's status is constantly displayed by submissive or dominant body language. A domestic dog will look up to its human master as a superior and will act as a subordinate. The strong social drive of all canids makes a tame dog stay with its master in the same way a wild dog stays with its pack. As much as we love our tame pets, we hate the wild dogs. Every day we can experience the loyalty and affection of our own dogs, but we seldom have the chance to see the wild canids making their most important contribution as top dogs in a naturally balanced ecosystem, keeping their prey healthy and strong by weeding out the weak and diseased. The small Arctic fox must face the most severe climate of any wild canid and has a most unusual adaptation, turning white in winter and dark in summer. Its summer coat may be any shade from light gray to black. These solitary animals communicate over long distances by barking. And they cover wide areas of tundra in search of their main food, rodents called lemmings. But their small size does not limit these resourceful foxes to small prey. During the barren winter, an Arctic fox will follow a polar bear for weeks on end. When the bear kills a seal, the fox too will feed. Also found in Alaska is the red fox. These diving Jaegers are trying to chase a prowling fox away from their nearby nest. The danger gone, the Jaeger can once again settle down to the task of incubating its eggs. The fox also has family duties. I think these young fox, or kits, look and act much more cat-like than the wolf pups seen earlier. Even their name, kits, suggests their resemblance. The red fox mother, or vixen, is very tolerant of her active kits and very responsive to their needs. She has a unique habit, caching, or burying food for later use. In the feast and famine world of the wild hunter, this behavior is essential, but rarely seen. This rabbit won't last long with her growing pups. Both mother and father hunt continually and bring food back to the den. The name, of course, is red fox, but in the northern areas, they're not always red. The mother's dark cross on her shoulders marks her as a cross fox. There's also a silver fox, actually black. But all three color phases belong to the red fox species. The pups in one litter can be any color. Although these were filmed in a remote area of Alaska, the red fox, the sly and cunning animal of legend and fairy tale, can live almost anywhere, even very close to man, as they do here in central Colorado, only yards away from a ranch house and a major highway. In fact, man's activities have opened up huge new areas for the red fox, which prefers fairly open range and demands little of its environment. Here, it shares its territory with a mountain bluebird. The red fox can now be found from the Arctic Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico. These kits were born in April. By June, when I discovered them, they were spending most of the day outside, playing for hours. Soon they will learn the art of hunting from their parents, and by fall, unless shot for stealing chickens or run over by a car, will go their own ways and take up new hunting grounds. The gray fox is another species that does not live up to its name. Its coat is often more reddish than gray. Mother drops food at the den, and she goes off to continue hunting. Her kits do some play hunting on their own. This endless play is vital training for all young canids. It teaches them the smell, taste, and feel of future prey. But the gray fox, like many of the wild dogs, is not only a predator. It is also a vegetarian and a scavenger, eating berries, fruit, and animals killed by other predators. The gray fox has a fascinating behavior. Using its long, curved claws, it can climb a tree to escape its enemies or to look for food. If I thought the red foxes were cat-like, the tree climbing of these gray foxes makes them seem even more so, and they practice their skill at a very early age. Both the gray and red fox are trapped for women's fur coats, but both seem to be holding their own in most areas. Gray foxes are now found from Canada to South America. This one, climbing high above the ground in a buckeye tree, was filmed in southern Ohio. The prairies of our western states are home for the small, rare swift fox. Even a full-grown fox is amazingly tiny, about the same size as a house cat. While the pups, too young to hunt, remain at the den, the mother fox must find food for them. It shares this prairie in Wyoming with other species, like the pronghorn antelope, too large, of course, for a fox to catch. In this parched land, a water hole attracts many animals. For the fox, it's a welcome stop on her hunting rounds. But a mother fox with hungry kits cannot stop for long. Always curious, she investigates a striped skunk. But its size and smell are too much for this little canid. She continues tracking prey, using her keen nose and ears. This white-tailed jackrabbit will make an abundant meal for her growing young. By fall, the vixen's kits will leave her, and by winter, she will once again be alone. Now in a warm winter coat, she hunts only for herself, scanning the plains for her next meal. On the alert for the smallest sound or movement. And traveling, always traveling. Summer and winter, the various rodents are a mainstay for the fox. Like the red fox, the swift fox will bury its food for later. It seems sad that this small, harmless swift fox has almost disappeared, mainly because of poisoning campaigns aimed at its more controversial relative, the coyote. Here, looking like it hasn't a care in the world. Its relations with man have been anything but carefree. Yet when persecuted intensely, it seems to bound back with renewed strength. And since the founding of our country, the coyote has greatly expanded its range. This coyote would love to make a meal of these sandhill cranes, engrossed in their mating ritual and seemingly unaware of the nearby predator. Perhaps the cranes know that this limping dog will be no threat, just so they keep their flight distance. Even in the midst of plenty, this coyote may go hungry, or it may go back to doing what it does best, that is, catching rodents. This remains the coyote's most important role, whether it lives in the country or the city. Like the rodents and birds it hunts, the coyote has a phenomenal birth rate. It can quadruple its numbers annually. All the wild dogs, wolves, coyotes, and foxes are resourceful, well-adapted, and intelligent, just like man. We are finally beginning to understand and appreciate the wild dogs, their complex social behavior, and their role as predator. But we must stop trapping and hunting them needlessly. We must allow them to live, to fulfill their natural role. Without these vital predators, we may never restore many of our ecosystems to their natural balance, and we may never fully realize the true value of the wild dogs. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America.